Alexis, and we are at Britt Fest tonight on Thursday night, and the smoke has actually cleared up, and we're with Ron White, our very, very special guest. He's going on tonight at 8:20, and it's our only comedy show of the entire season, and he's kind enough to speak with us a little bit about some of our audience-driven questions, and here he is.
Here I am. And 8:20 is 4:20 plus 4. So
that's right.
That's how good this is right here. That's how good it is.
So we're just gonna get started.
Sure.
So our first question is, if someone is just discovering your music, or sorry, your show for the first time, your comedy for the first time, what is something that you can tell them about your comedic style and about how you got involved in the blue collar comedy crew?
Well, I would be considered a long-form storyteller, and that's where you write the punchlines into stories instead of just writing them into jokes. So it is really the only way I know how to do it. That's kind of why I do it that way. So if somebody said you need to write a joke about a chicken and gave me a piece of paper and a pencil, I could not write a joke about a chicken. I might, but it'd be horrible. And if 20 people wrote a joke about chicken, it might be the 5th worst one, because I just don't work that way. Jeff Foxworthy of Blue Collar Comedy Tour was at the first show I ever did on September 17, 1986, before you were born. And he was the headliner in the club the day I did my first open mic night. And he came up to me after the show and said, hey, you're really funny, but you need to put the punchline at the end of the joke. And I was like, how do you do that? And that's how generous this guy is. I've been on stage 4 minutes in my life, and he sat me down. I had 4 jokes, or 4 things that I did. And he sat me down and said, let's see if you say this part here, and just restructured the sentence. Where the funny part, not talking during the laugh, stepping on the laugh. And that's just an amazingly gracious and wonderfully generous thing for somebody at his, he was just a club headliner, but I was nothing. I wasn't even an open micer yet. They wouldn't even let me come back for another month. And then I got to where, I got good at it really fast, and I was really at home on stage, and then I got to where I was opening at the club pretty soon. And then I got to where I was headlining clubs within a couple of 3 years, and then then when Jeff got big, he took me with him as his opening act, doing these big rooms, and that's when the real party started. And his jet, fun stuff, and one day there was another big tour with Bill Engvall and not Dan, Larry the Cable Guy, but another guy named Craig Hawksley, and they were going to combine those 2 tours to make the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. And my comment, when he told me about it, I said, that's retarded. Nobody needs 4 comedians in a show. That just doesn't even make sense. So I didn't see it coming. And that's the most successful comedy tour in the history of spoken word. That might be a little dramatic, but it's true. No, by far. It's 3, I don't even know how much money it grossed, but it went on longer than anything else. And the movies were just maybe 10 million copies of the DVDs. That's what made me famous. And I got famous off of very little material, because I got famous off the first one, and I was on it for 10 minutes, and I told an 8-minute long story at the end. And so I had another hour and a half that nobody had ever seen. So I was really set up to tour big time, and that's how that happened.
It's amazing. So besides your roots in storytelling and with Jeff, what other artists or performers do you watch or have watched in your past to influence what you do today, or what drives you to do what you do?
When I was a little kid, my uncle was a preacher, and he was very funny, and I loved to go to church when I was a little kid, because I loved to listen to my uncle preach. And he was a gifted orator, a Baptist preacher. I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. And my relatives will tell you that I have his pace on stage. So that's kind of where I learned to do it, was watching him with just pace, rhythm, timing. And those are the things I'm really good at, is pace, rhythm, timing. I'm just a good speaker. And and then I was a fan of comedy. So I had, everybody's albums in the 60s. So Cosby and Pryor and Carlin, and everybody, and so I'm sure they all, as well as my uncle, had an influence over who I became as a comedian. But there was one individual, a guy named Bill Hicks, that probably had more than anybody else. That's the guy that I really admired the most, and he was probably the best. Definitely the best comedian of my generation. He died young, 32 years old.
Yeah.
And his stuff is still relevant as it can be. You can still get it on iTunes. So Bill Hicks, look it up.
Yeah. Is there anyone that inspires you today that's like still around, or that's maybe like up and coming, or just?
I'm still a vibrant. Well, I don't know why I'm vibrant, but I'm still a part of the comedy community.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I'm in LA, I do 3 sets a night. I go to the Improv Comedy Store and the Laugh Factory every night, not just some nights, every single night, and do sets. So I know all the young comics that are kicking ass right now. I know Sebastian and who else? Chris D'Elia and Ali Wong and Eliza Schlesinger and what's his name? Anthony Jeselnik, who's so goddamn funny. And Joe Rogan, and you go and if you go to the Comedy Store in LA, just the quality of the comedians that go on stage there will blow anything. I mean, I can't even believe who I have to follow just to do 15 minutes. Everybody that goes up there smokes the place. And it hadn't always been that way. And it's gotten really popular again, I think because of the podcast.
Yeah.
And I know that there's been kind of I've always done well for the last 15 years, but this is probably the best year in 4 or 5 years because of podcasts. I started doing my friends' podcasts, which I thought were just a pain in the ass, and I never did them.
Like
and like Joe Rogan's podcast, he talked me into it. I'm like, I was, geez, okay, I'll do it. I had no idea how big it was.
Yeah.
7 million downloads.
I mean, Chris D'Elia, his Instagram's ridiculous.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Crazy. And so I did Joey Diaz, but those things are they're huge. I mean, 7 million, I don't think anybody's ever done 7 million of anything with me. I don't think 7 million people ever saw something at one time. And so that was huge. And I do Kill Tony every once in a while, getting Doug with Hine or whatever it was. But I think all those things have really driven the people back to the comedy clubs, and especially the Comedy Store. So it's just always packed, and it's always a blast.
Yeah.
I love doing it.
That's great.
I still love doing stand-up after all these years.
That's awesome. Well, you've already touched on it a little bit, but what are your ideas about what the different roles of comedians are today?
Well, I don't know. The only obligation I feel is to give you the release that you're going to get from laughing as hard as you can possibly laugh, as long as I want to do it, and I can do that. So I do it. I feel an obligation to entertain when I'm on stage, and I feel like that's my role, is to shake you by the throat. And back during the presidential elections, I didn't talk about it hardly at all, and the reason was I didn't feel like that was my position. I thought my position was to do my show, and not necessarily shut up and sing, but shut up and entertain. And I wasn't a political commentator before. Why would I be one now that is low-hanging fruit?
Right.
And and I think my fans really appreciated that. They just, because there was so much tension in the air, and there still is. And so same with tonight. I'll just go out there and make them laugh, and that's what they want. And so that's what I'm doing.
That's great. Well, we are so happy to have you here and are so excited to see your art on stage. Again, we're with comedian Ron White at his Britt Fest show, and thank you so much for talking with us. And he goes on at 8:20 tonight.
8:20. Yep. That's 4:20.
Sold out show.
Woo.